I get asked a lot whether it's worth spending the money buying an expensive air fryer over a cheap one, given that these days we don't always know if our appliances will last a long time. I've reviewed dozens of air fryers, from supermarket brands to models that cost 10 times as much. And in this video, I'll tell you some of the differences between cheap and expensive models, and the one red flag with cheap models that I always watch out for. The first difference between cheap and expensive air fryers is presets versus settings. Now, they sound similar, but they are not. Cheap air fryers usually have one speed with a range of presets that are simply pre-programmed time and temperature combinations that are roughly right for different food types. These buttons will either have symbols representing food, or they'll be named after different food types. If you spend a little bit more, you tend to get air fryers that have settings, which are buttons which are named after styles of cooking, like dehydrate and roast and bake. And these settings will have different fan speeds. So a lower setting is needed for something like dehydrating foods, and a higher one will then give you fast cooking for frozen foods like chips. So different fan speeds make air fryers more versatile. More expensive air fryers generally have better non-stick coatings. This doesn't just mean that food doesn't stick to them, it also means that they're easier to keep clean, harder to damage, and are arguably often made with safer coatings. Now, to be clear, PFOA, which was the concerning chemical in Teflon, hasn't been used in production since 2013. And both the World Health Organization and the European Food Safety Authority say that the PTFE material which is now used is safe. However, many people prefer to avoid it entirely and choose ceramic non-stick coatings in preference. Those are harder to find and generally only used on more expensive air fryers. It's also worth noting that some manufacturers also either don't publish what their non-stick coatings are made of, or sometimes seem to not even know what they're made of. I always inquire when I'm reviewing air fryers if it's not listed in the product information, and sometimes with the cheaper ones, I never actually get a reply. Which brings me to my third point. In my experience, manufacturers of premium priced air fryers generally have a little bit more control over the manufacturing process. They start by creating a design in-house, usually something that their marketing team tell them that there is a gap in the market for, and then they find a manufacturer to make it to their specifications. It'll go through an extensive process of research and development, going backwards and forwards to the factory until they have a version which is perfected, and then they can release it on sale. Whereas some of the cheaper air fryers appear to be made by factories overseas and then badged up by a brand in the UK and sold as part of their range, without the brand having much involvement, if any, in the production. And I think the biggest clue of whether an air fryer has been through a period of research and development is the plus and minus buttons. Now, in the UK, we expect minus to be on the left and plus to be on the right, or down to be on the left and up to be on the right. And so when I see that reversed on an air fryer, that to me is a little bit of a red flag, as an indication that the appliance probably hasn't been through a lot of product development. So do cheap air fryers cook as well as more expensive ones? Often, unfortunately, they don't. In my experience testing them, I found some cheaper models run slow and take longer to cook, or if the fans are underpowered, it can result in uneven browning of your food. So although most people buy air fryers to save time and money, if you get a cheap one, it may actually take longer to cook your food than the traditional oven that you were using before. And cooking time is only one of the factors you need to consider if time saving is important to you, because some budget air fryers don't have dishwasher safe parts. And this can be for two reasons. Firstly, they might just be made of cheaper materials that can't stand up to the high temperatures and high pressure on a dishwasher cleaning cycle. But it can also be a cost-saving measure, because if you're a manufacturer and you want to check that your appliance parts are dishwasher safe before you put them on sale, you have to pay for dishwasher testing. So if you have a cheap product, one way to keep it cheap is to skip the dishwasher testing. Now, you might have seen a lot of stories in the news recently about air fryers catching fire. A lot of people are concerned about it, and I've had messages and comments about it. Over the last couple of years, with the many air fryers that I've tested, I have experienced a couple of air fryers that have actually reached temperatures beyond the maximum that you can set them for, and one fairly recently that actually started having smoke pouring out of it. So safety features are really important, and they aren't standard in all air fryers. More expensive models will have an auto heat shutoff if the unit starts overheating, and personally I think that's really worth paying for. If you aren't sure if the brand you're looking at has an auto shutoff, and it should be in the product information, do ask them, because if they've got it, they'll normally be very keen to tell you about it. If you buy an air fryer from a leading brand, you will also find there tends to be more third-party accessories available that fit in that air fryer, and bigger support groups on social media. They also tend to come with much better instructions and usually a recipe book as well. Now, I realise that's not important to everybody, but if you're new to owning an air fryer, it's so much easier to buy one that means that you are instantly part of an established community. And when you're trying out recipes, you're less likely to waste food if you find a recipe that's been cooked in your exact model of air fryer already by somebody. Build quality does matter when you choose an appliance, not just because better built models should hopefully last longer, but because ones made with higher grade materials are likely to be better insulated, which will in turn make them cheaper to run. Many air fryers I've reviewed become quite hot to the touch on the outside after they've been running for a few minutes, but some are so well insulated that they only feel slightly warm on the outside after you've been using them. And so all that heat and energy you're putting into them is staying in the oven. Customer support is usually something you pay for with better, more expensive brands. But a good way to protect yourself if you do buy a cheaper one is to buy it from a retailer who offers good support. Like a supermarket, we can actually go back in person and talk to somebody, or a chain like Lakeland, or of course Amazon. I get a lot of comments from people talking about consumer rights when you buy appliances, and how warranties and customer service don't matter because of what the law says. But if you can't get hold of the company that you bought the product from, it's going to be very time consuming and frustrating for you to exercise those rights. So it's just easier to buy from a company that has decent customer support to begin with. And finally, another thing, cheap air fryers don't generally have Wi-Fi connectivity. Now, I know this is a love-hate thing because I've seen your comments. Not everybody is going to want Wi-Fi connectivity, but a lot of people love it. They like having an app where they can select a recipe, press a button, and then their air fryer is all set up with the correct time and temperatures and settings. So that is something else to consider if you like it. Now, my intention was not to push you in either direction on the expensive versus cheap debate, but I hope that I've been helpful to you so you're more armed with knowledge when you make up your mind about which air fryer to buy. If you're still considering your options, I've got a load of reviews of the most popular air fryers on my channel, and I'll drop a link to the air fryer review playlist in the description below. You'll also find some links to some of my favourite air fryers and details on how you can help choose some of the products I review on this channel by becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching.